The mop clattered to the floor as Marcus Rivera's hands trembled, not from the cold water he'd been using to clean the marble lobby, but from the words that had just cut through him like shattered glass. "You people should be invisible," the CEO had said, his Italian leather shoes stepping over the puddle Marcus had been cleaning, as if stepping over Marcus himself. "I don't pay premium rent to see poverty staring back at me every morning." Marcus was 42 years old, a single father of two. And every morning at 4:30 he left his sleeping children in their cramped apartment to scrub the floors of the Sterling Towers, one of Manhattan's most prestigious office buildings. His daughter Emma was 9, his son David was 7, and they were his entire world. Their mother had walked out 3 years ago, unable to handle the financial strain, unable to watch her dreams crumble under the weight of hospital bills and broken promises. Marcus had stayed. He always stayed, because that's what fathers do. But this morning, as he stood in that gleaming lobby with cleaning solution dripping from his worn fingers facing Jonathan Sterling, the billionaire CEO whose company occupied 15 floors of this tower, Marcus felt something inside him crack. Not break, but crack, like ice before the thaw. "I asked you a question," Sterling continued, his voice echoing off the glass and steel around them. "Why are you still standing here? I have investors arriving in 20 minutes and I don't need them seeing this." He gestured vaguely at Marcus, at his faded uniform, at the life that showed in every line on his face. "If you believe that every person deserves dignity, that kindness costs nothing but means everything, please hit that like button. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that we never truly know someone's journey. And subscribe to our channel, because stories like this story is about real human strength. They need to be told. They need to be heard." Marcus bent down slowly, picked up his mop, and returned to his work without a word. He had learned long ago that some battles aren't worth fighting, especially when you have 2 children depending on your paycheck. But as he worked, something Jonathan Sterling said nagged at him. "You people should be invisible." Invisible. That's exactly what Marcus had been trying to be for the past 5 years. Ever since. Everything changed. Ever since the life he'd once known had been stripped away. The rest of that day passed in a blur of toilets scrubbed and trash bins emptied. Marcus moved through the building like a ghost, just as Sterling had wanted. But at 3 in the afternoon, as he was cleaning the executive conference room, he overheard voices. Sterling's voice, unmistakable in its arrogance. "The Veterans Memorial Fundraiser. Cancel it. Tell them we're reallocating those funds to the quarterly bonus pool. Those people already got their parades and their thank yous. That's enough." Marcus's hand froze on the table he was wiping. The Veterans Memorial Fundraiser, he knew about it. The entire building had been buzzing about Sterling Enterprises' supposed commitment to supporting wounded veterans. It had been all over the news, Sterling's face plastered on every business magazine, talking about honor and sacrifice and giving back. It was all a lie. Something in Marcus shifted in that moment. That crack in the ice widened. That evening, Marcus returned to his apartment, climbed the 4 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken again, and opened the door to find Emma helping David with his homework at their small kitchen table. The apartment was tiny, the furniture was secondhand, but it was clean and filled with love. On the wall hung a single photograph, faded now, of a younger Marcus in military dress uniform, rows of medals on his chest, standing proud and strong. "Daddy." Emma jumped up and hugged him. "Mrs. Chen said you can pay the rent next week instead of today." She said not to worry. Marcus's heart squeezed. Even their landlord had to show them mercy now. He glanced at his reflection in the bathroom mirror as he washed his hands for dinner. The tattoo on his left forearm, usually hidden beneath his long sleeves, was partially visible. It was a detailed insignia, an eagle clutching arrows and an olive branch, surrounded by text in Latin. Most people who saw it assumed it was just military pride, a common tattoo for veterans. They never looked closely enough to see the specific details, the particular unit designation, the significance of every element. Marcus had spent 12 years as a Navy SEAL. He'd been part of missions that would never be declassified, had saved lives in ways that would never make the news, had served his country with every fiber of his being. Then, on his last deployment, an explosion had killed 3 of his team members and left Marcus with injuries that took 2 years to heal. The physical wounds had mended, but the emotional ones, watching his brothers die, had changed him forever. He'd returned home to find his wife pregnant with David, struggled to adapt to civilian life, and eventually found stable work as a security consultant for high-profile clients. The pay was good, life was manageable. Then Emma got sick. Leukemia. The medical bills piled up faster than insurance could cover them. Marcus burned through their savings, then their retirement, then borrowed from everyone he knew. Emma survived, thank God, but their finances didn't. His wife left, he lost his consulting job during the recession, and suddenly, the Navy SEAL was scrubbing toilets to keep his children fed. He'd never told anyone at Sterling Towers about his past. What would be the point? His service didn't pay the bills. His medals didn't put food on the table. He was invisible, just like Sterling wanted. But the next morning, everything changed. Marcus arrived at 4:30 as usual, but when he entered the lobby, he found it filled with people. Police officers, EMTs, and at the center of the chaos, Jonathan Sterling, clutching his chest, his face pale and twisted in pain. A heart attack, Marcus realized immediately. He'd seen it before in the field, when stress and adrenaline pushed the human body past its limits. Everyone was panicking. Someone was on the phone with 911, but the ambulance was stuck in traffic. A water main break had closed several streets. Sterling was going to die if someone didn't act. Marcus dropped his cleaning supplies and pushed through the crowd. His SEAL training kicked in, muscle memory from 1,000 drills from real situations where seconds meant the difference between life and death. He knelt beside Sterling, checked his pulse, his breathing, and started barking orders. You call the building security, get the AD from the second floor now. You clear this space, everyone back, you get me a blanket, and keep that door open for the paramedics. His voice carried the authority of someone who'd commanded men in combat, someone who'd made life and death decisions under fire. People obeyed instantly. Marcus administered CPR, precise compressions, steady and controlled. When the AD arrived, he applied it correctly, shocked Sterling's heart back into rhythm, and kept him stable until the paramedics finally arrived. As they loaded Sterling onto a stretcher, the CEO's eyes flickered open. He looked at Marcus, really looked at him for the first time, and whispered, You're the janitor. Yeah, Marcus said quietly, I'm the janitor. The next day, Marcus expected to return to his invisible routine. But when he arrived at the building, he was met by Sterling's executive assistant, who told him Mr. Sterling wanted to see him. Marcus's stomach dropped. He'd probably crossed some line, touched the CEO without permission, caused some kind of liability issue. But when he was escorted to Sterling's office, Sterling had refused to stay in the hospital longer than necessary. The man who greeted him was different, humbled, shaken. Sit down, Sterling said, his voice weak but genuine. Please. Marcus sat uncomfortable in his janitor's uniform in this office that cost more than his entire year's salary. The doctors told me I would have died without immediate intervention, Sterling began. They said whoever helped me knew exactly what they were doing. So I looked into your file. He paused. There's nothing in it. No background, no history before you started working here 5 years ago. So I dug deeper. He slid a folder across the desk. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Rivera, Navy SEAL. Silver Star, Bronze Star, Purple Heart. 12 years of distinguished service. Marcus said nothing. Why didn't you tell anyone? Sterling asked, and for the first time there was no arrogance in his voice. Only confusion and something that might have been shame. Would it have mattered? Marcus replied simply. My past doesn't change my present. I needed work. You needed someone to clean your floors. That was the transaction. Sterling was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something Marcus never expected. He rolled up his own sleeve, revealing a faded Marine Corps tattoo on his forearm. My father, he explained. He served in Vietnam, came home broken, spent years trying to find his place again. He died when I was 20, still struggling, still invisible to people. Like he couldn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. I became exactly what he hated, Sterling whispered. I forgot where I came from. I forgot what matters. Marcus watched as the billionaire CEO, this man, who had humiliated him just yesterday, broke down, crying, really crying, in a way that showed years of buried pain and forgotten humanity. What happened next took weeks, but the changes were real. Sterling reinstated the Veterans Fundraiser, tripled its budget, and established a foundation specifically for supporting veterans transitioning to civilian life. He offered Marcus a position as Director of Veteran Relations, a role that paid what his skills and experience actually deserved. But more than that, Sterling changed how he treated every person in that building, learning names, saying thank you, remembering that invisible didn't mean invaluable. Marcus accepted the position, not for himself, but for what it represented. For every veteran scrubbing floors or driving cabs or struggling to find their place in a world that had forgotten them. For every person dismissed as invisible when they were actually extraordinary. On his first day in his new role, Marcus wore a suit instead of a uniform, but he rolled up his sleeves, letting his tattoo show. The eagle, the arrows, the olive branch, not as a badge of pride, but as a reminder. A reminder that we never know the battles people have fought, the lives they've lived, the sacrifices they've made. Emma and David visited him at his new office, their eyes wide with wonder at the view from the 50th floor. David traced his finger over his father's tattoo and asked, "Dad, does this mean things are going to be okay now?" Marcus knelt down and hugged both his children close. "Things were always going to be okay," he told them, "because we have each other. Everything else is just details." If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you to see the person behind every face you pass, please hit that like button. Comment below and tell us about a time someone surprised you with their hidden strength. Share this story with someone who needs to remember their worth, because every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. And kindness, simple, free, human kindness can change everything. Before we end, I want to hear from you. Please comment with one word that describes how this story made you feel. That night, Marcus returned to his new apartment, larger, now safer, in a building with a working elevator, and hung that old photograph of himself in uniform on the wall. Not to remember who he used to be, but to honor the journey that brought him here. From invisible to invaluable, from humiliated to human. Because sometimes the greatest strength isn't in staying hidden. Sometimes it's in letting the world see your scars, your struggles, and your truth. Sometimes it's in the tattoo you've been covering up, the mark of who you really are beneath the labels others place on you. And sometimes, just sometimes, the person who needs saving the most is the one who thought they had all the power. Sterling learned that lesson. Marcus already knew it. And now, in a gleaming office tower in Manhattan, two men who should have been strangers became allies in remembering what really matters: dignity, respect, and the courage to see everyone truly see them as they deserve to be seen. The janitor was never just a janitor. The billionaire was never just his wealth. And the tattoo that revealed everything wasn't just ink on skin. It was a story, a history, a reminder that every person you meet contains multitudes, if only you're willing to look.